Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
We're at the Great Minnesota Get-Together, where I spoke with lawmakers about issues to address in the next legislative session, how the pandemic changed society, and more. Plus, a legislative task force on aging begins meeting, and change is coming to the Minnesota Supreme Court. Stay tuned for this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. We're at the State Fair, just outside the Education Building, where fairgoers can stop at the Senate and House booths to take their popular opinion polls and talk with lawmakers. I spoke with a handful of senators about a few topics, and I began by asking them what makes Minnesota a truly unique place to live.
I think it's got to be the quality of the snowblower that you have. We always had this joke that if you want to go on a vacation, you put a snowblower in the back of your truck and you drive south until somebody says, "What is that?" And then you've reached a place that doesn't have to plow snow. So really, there's a difference. And I've been a homeowner now for about, 20 years. And we start out with like the worst ones, and now that is worth the investment. Get a good snowblower.
Wow, besides the weather, all 4 seasons in one day, I think I love Minnesota just because we have a high quality life and we have great natural resources. We've had a great business climate, and all those things I think make it great. By the way, we're at the State Fair. In the 12 best days of the year, we have the best state fair.
I've lived a ton of places across the United States and Canada, and first, the people here they truly are nice. They're just easygoing, nice, intelligent. I love, love, love the people, but on top of that, Minnesota is so beautiful. I mean, our lakes and our outdoor life is second to none in the whole country.
One, I love the seasons. I love change, which you don't get in every part of the country. But I also really believe that the people here are genuinely nice, and we like to invest in things that help people. So for example, I moved back to Minnesota because our education system is quality, our health system is quality, and it's just where I wanted to raise my kids.
Minnesota has a state drink, a state butterfly, a state fish, a state flower, even a state soil. What could be the next Minnesota state something?
It's amazing how many state things we have, because in my community we have Woodbury Days, and that's one of the raffle questions we ask there, so I learned all the state things. I do not believe there is a state hot dish. And of course, because it's Minnesota, it needs to be a hot dish and not a casserole. So I would advocate for a state hot dish. My vote would be tater tot.
I had this bill in 2014, I think. I wanted our state color. Many states, I think there's like 34 states that actually have a state color, and we don't. So I thought our state color should be purple. For the Minnesota Vikings and for Alzheimer's awareness, that's also their color too. I had that bill, kind of got laughed out of the Senate, and I think it's still a really, really good bill. So I've got Senator Julia Coleman on it for next year. I'll be the second author, but I said, you got the whole Prince Highway thing through, so maybe you, coming from Chanhassen, can get the color purple through.
A boot, the state shoe. There should be a state shoe, and it should be a boot. Kind of continuing on with our winter theme here in Minnesota. We need something sturdy, and I think we should have a Minnesota shoe.
Should it be steel toe?
It should be steel toe. Yes, it absolutely should be. And for sure something with some traction.
For me, I would rather have none. I think it's fun, and I'd actually like to see it be, maybe it's a governor's choice. Pick 20 different things like you're quizzing today. What are those 20 ancillary things that you get to name for 4 years? And pick a flower, I think Senator Housley had the state dog to be a black lab. They're fun to talk about, but I think it'd be fun to have a more creative way to do that on an ongoing basis, and likely doesn't need state legislature to create law.
If someone were to plan a vacation in your district, what's 1 or 2 things that they absolutely must see or do?
On the Senate district just north of St. Paul, Minneapolis, I actually have 2 state parks, Wild River State Park and Interstate State Park. Interstate State Park, I think, is still one that receives the most participation or attendance, and those 2 are gems. 1, geologically, and 2, the resources for primitive camping on the river. It doesn't get any better.
Well, so I have a great district all around, but White Bear Lake is one of those iconic downtown, old school, like nostalgic towns. So I would say if you only have one day and you're coming to our district, you can do Lakeshore Theater, White Bear Arts Center, and then finish the night off with Big Wood Brewery.
My district is Woodbury and portion of Maplewood. We have excellent shopping. I hear a lot of people come to my area for that. For me, it's really the fact that as the community was growing, we invested in a lot of parks and trails and walking space. So I love the green space. I think there's over 170 miles of trails. That's what I would recommend.
They absolutely must get on one of those boats. The St. Croix Boat and Packet Company is right downtown, and you can take a brunch cruise, a dinner cruise. They've got so many boats, and they go, it's about a 2 to 3 hour you can pick tour of the whole St. Croix River, and you honestly feel like you're in Europe. It's so beautiful. And then, either before the boat or after the boat, you have to visit our many boutique shops downtown and our restaurants. It's just, again, I think I've got the best district in the whole state because it's just beautiful and there's great restaurants and great shops.
And just to be clear, we're talking about Stillwater.
We're talking about Stillwater.
With the COVID-19 pandemic mostly in the rearview mirror, what do you think is one or two of the most significant societal changes to stem from it?
One, Zoom meetings. Remember, it was just like 4 years ago, if you wanted to do a video conference call, you'd have to go to a place that was specially set up with their green screen behind you, and now you can do meetings with anybody across the state or country or world right from your own living room. So that's changed everything. More people are working from home. And that was a good change that happened quickly, because now even at the Capitol, we can have people during a blizzard in International Falls still be able to testify in committee on an issue that's important to them. So that's a good change. I think also too, especially now, COVID is in the rearview mirror. I think looking at government control and really asking yourself or ask questions of the government. We kind of all just went, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to shut down. We're going to get our vaccines because the government tells us to do. I think really questioning when government takes too much control to just start asking questions.
I think in general, we found out that more people can balance working from home. And I think that's a nice shift, just work-life balance, and also environmentally, maybe not driving as much. I also think we realize the significance of women in the workplace and the ability to juggle families and childcare, and how we really need to invest in that to make sure that everyone can be engaged in the workplace, especially when things happen, life happens, or even a pandemic.
I think the most significant societal change is really the workforce. We've looked at it and it's accelerated many things. In a negative area, we lost 23,000 healthcare workers in critical services, nursing homes, group homes, and they're not coming back. And so we likely would have been there, but we would have had time to transition. The other impact, I think, was the work from home or everybody working from their basement. Some of that was happening naturally. When you have accountability baked into those roles, it's effective. I did it for 22 years, but you have accountability. I'm concerned that many businesses, you're seeing the transformation of bringing people back in. It's important for people to be in the proximity of others, and I think that is coming back in the private sector, but it's not coming back in the government sector.
I think people are more choosy about when and where they work. And what I mean by that is, when am I going to work, as far as what does my day look like, wanting some of that flexibility, and then where do I work? And not just so much about what kind of a job you have, but also am I online? Am I at home? I think we in Minnesota and around the world all had a brush with death, and we are a little bit more cognizant about what a quality of life means to us.
From conversations with constituents or even here at the State Fair, what are some of the issues that lawmakers should address in the next legislative session?
What just came out, as we're discovering in so many pieces of legislation, now figuring out what they passed, school resource officers. So our parents are furious and frustrated that we would ever consider removing school resource officers, and technically we didn't remove them. You just neutered them in their ability to 7 or 8 specific techniques to restrain somebody. It's one of those areas that is not ambiguous in the statute. It's very clear. They can hardly touch somebody above the waist to safely constrain somebody from committing a violent assault on a teacher or other students. We need them in our schools to make sure they're safe, and they do a valuable service.
So we've done many town halls in my district and here again at the State Fair, listening to constituents. So much was passed so quickly. The Democrats' wish list was all piled into every single omnibus bill, and a lot of it wasn't vetted. A lot of things that have just gone into law August 1st, our people are like, wait, what's happening? So I keep saying we got to get back there and do cleanup in aisle 8. Whether it's the legalization of marijuana, we have our cities wondering if they can prohibit it or not prohibit the sale of it. And I just got a call from one of my police chiefs. What they added into the education bill was that they're not allowed to, their school resource officers, their police officer in the school isn't allowed to break up any fights. They cannot touch anybody that's fighting. They have to actually call 911 to get the police to come. So what's the point of having a school resource officer in the school?
We got so many amazing things this last year, but the things that I'm hearing that people still want more environmental protections, that the environment is very important to people in Minnesota, still working on that child care piece to make sure that's expanded. And I've been so proud that I've even had students in my office talking about things like child abuse and more investment in STEM and just getting that younger generation excited and all the great ideas they're bringing forward too.
One of the biggest bills that I had this past session was universal school meals, and I think that played a big part in eliminating childhood hunger. But there's a lot more we can do. And now that every student in Minnesota gets a breakfast and a lunch, no questions asked at school, the next logical question might be, what kind of food are they eating? So I'm on the Agriculture Committee and the Education Committee. We're working on a bill to put food or farm to school bill into the base so that it's a consistent funding source for schools and kids.
And so that would mean that things that are grown here in Minnesota are making their way onto the plates of Minnesota school kids.
Absolutely. This means that, you know, the food that we eat is made here and delivered here and grown here in Minnesota, and it's going to be healthier. It's going to eliminate transportation costs, and it does two things, right? It supports two of our major industries, education and agriculture.
By taking the time to talk with fairgoers, you are conveying the importance of having good relations between lawmakers and the public. Why is it important that citizens interact with their lawmakers and stay informed about legislative issues?
Information is power to voters. The more they're aware of, the more they can make an educated decision on what best serves them and their families. And if those representatives that we're electing, or the senators you're electing, the governor, the attorney general, everybody on your ballot, right, local to state government, do they represent your values? And you aren't going to know that unless you're engaged in the process, and part of that comes from having a good line of communication with your legislators, and that's what I strive to do.
I think it's the most important thing that anybody can do, and I know there's a lot of great stuff streaming on Netflix and Prime Video and Hulu, but just take some time to talk to your legislator or your school board member or your city council member about issues that are important to you. Some of the issues we'll never even know about unless somebody comes to us. And so establishing that relationship and knowing that every time I go to Karen up in Forest Lake, I know where she's coming from and her issue is a good one. A bunch of seniors in my district always come to me to say what's happening in their assisted living. So it's really, really important. I think more people should actually reach out because we do want to talk to our people. All of us, Democrats, Republicans, we all want to talk to our constituents and hear what's happening on the ground in their neighborhood.
Even before I was a state senator, I was an election judge. So I really think it's important for people to vote and have their voice made clear. So I think that piece of it is important to be engaged voters, but also sometimes our constituents have the best ideas and might know of an issue that we might not have heard of before or might not have thought of the full scope of it. So I love that constituents have that relationship where they can bring us ideas and we can actually work in bringing that to life in terms of legislation that will positively impact their lives.
You know, you've been down there. So few people have ever participated in a state level government or any level of government. If you've ever seen me out in my district, city, county, township, school boards, county sheriff, county prosecutors, all of those are important and elected positions that serve us. We need to make sure that they reflect our values. And if anybody hears me, I say, just show up. You will bring a level of accountability to them that they're not used to. I've had city council people, mayors, school board members leave because citizens finally showed up. And so they have to take an active participation in all levels of government.
Senate and House Republicans were joined by law enforcement and school officials to call for the repeal of a new state law that restricts school resource officers from using certain physical restraints on students.
Having a school resource officer at the school is a critical way that we can keep our schools safe. The consequences of the new law that is concerning, that you have heard about and you will hear more about this morning, that is being pushed through our schools, it is actually pushing our school resource officers out of the districts, such as Moorhead, Anoka, Coon Rapids, Andover, Rockford, Redwood Falls, St. Louis County, and others that are still making their decisions.
Under the current law, there are questions regarding the role of SROs, which restricts their ability to use force or use of restraints. The potential impact to Centennial is the possibility of our school resource agreements being suspended and SROs being pulled out of our schools. In turn, this may have an impact on the safety and security measures in place at our schools.
To the moms and dads out there who might be a little bit anxious regarding the news they've heard in terms of school resource officers maybe not being in some of the school buildings like they have been in the past, I want to assure you we hear your concerns. We're working to address this and fix this as quickly as possible in a truly bipartisan fashion. And I also want to let teachers and school staff know out there, we take your safety extremely seriously as well. We know that you enjoy having school resource officers in your buildings to keep you and students safe. That's why we're here today. I'm joining others in calling on the governor to bring Republicans and Democrats together for a special session before school starts so that we can fix this issue, keep our SROs, and ensure our kids are safe.
The only time force is acceptable is when there is a threat of bodily harm or death. Okay, there's a lot of situations that come up where the threat of bodily harm or death may not be immediate, but they're an escalating situation. Some examples of that may be, let's say there's a student who's been expelled who's trespassing, or at a football game. We may have 3, 4, 5, 6 officers working at a football game. We have students that are being disorderly, maybe throwing bottles out on the field, causing a ruckus. Generally, what we will try to do is get them to leave. Or trespass them from the school property. We cannot do that physically. We actually would have to call officers in off the street who are governed by other rules in this statute to manage that situation then. So the cops are calling the cops.
When I hear the chief come up here and describe the fact that he and other agencies are having to look at workarounds, are having to try to establish police patrolling zones rather than having SROs in buildings where they can immediately diffuse situations, keep people safe, and deter and prevent instances from escalating. That's what we're talking about here. That's what we want to reset to. That's what our bill would do. It's a simple repealer. It's not a political statement. It doesn't get into the weeds on anything. It simply says, let's go back to where we were before this was an issue. Let's fix it.
And the newly formed Legislative Task Force on Aging held its first meeting, which concluded with comments from members about some of the topics they hope the task force will address.
How can we give seniors a purpose? They age much better if somehow they can connect with others in the area when it comes to church or discussion groups or fitness or hobbies. That's one area I would like to have us focus on.
If there are good services out there, how do we engage effectively with our communities so they know they're available and can use them effectively? And then 2, implementation, in that we have these innovations available. How do we implement them and scale them effectively so they can help the people who require that help across the state?
Transportation's a big one. Getting more vehicles out in the rural areas that have adaptable things for wheelchairs and walkers, because most people that do the rural pickup and stuff, a lot of those don't have those kind of vehicles.
I'm a firm believer that most individuals know what they need, and we have to remove also the stigma of asking for help and asking for what you need. And so as we normalize aging and we have respect and dignity in aging, I think that will help us move the conversations that we need to have going forward.
A new state law ensures that the Capitol's electrolier will shine during the legislative session. Here's a look at the history of this unique chandelier. The chandelier is one of the unique features of the state capitol. What makes it so popular?
It's in the center of the building, and so if you look at this big round space called the rotunda, it's one of the things you'll notice when you walk into this space. It's directly above you, 142 feet above, and it's really kind of, this rotunda is a showplace of the state capitol, so the idea is you see this beautiful light fixture that has 92 light bulbs inside of it that is really a spectacular part of the decoration. And that was what Cass Gilbert, the architect, had intended for this space, was to have this beautiful round space for the public and see all the beautiful architectural detail and artwork and light fixture in this case.
At the time, electricity was a new technology, and the chandelier was actually called electrolier. Can you talk more about that?
Sure. Yeah, this was really an important part of this building's design, was to have wired electricity throughout the building. There was a power plant that generated all that electricity across the street from the Capitol, and you have to remember this was a place to really proclaim and brag about Minnesota's technology and prosperity and progress. And what better place to have that than in your state capitol? So at that time, a chandelier is a fixture that has candles technically, and we still call it a chandelier today. But at that time, they were bragging that this was an electrolier because electricity was so new, so it had a real value to really enhance the understanding that technology was probably a new thing and an important part of this overall design of the Capitol.
Is there some symbolism to its placement and the fact that we're the North Star state and it's shaped like a globe?
Well, we do have the North Stars in the floor of the rotunda that represent Minnesota, the North Star state, our state motto. If you look at the ceiling above here, it has a blue panels to represent the sky. There's 12 zodiac symbols and huge murals, 9-foot murals that represent the constellations. So some people do look at that chandelier or that electrolier as a symbol of the North Star. And part of that is the importance of the state symbol as a North Star state was it's a guiding light. And so other states can follow Minnesota's lead, and that's the symbolism behind that North Star. So that could be a very appropriate way of looking at that electrolier as a North Star.
How challenging is the maintenance of it?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive when you look at how high it is, and that's the question people will often ask on tours is how do you maintain that? There's over 48,000 crystal beads, 92 light bulbs inside that chandelier, and when you stand below here on the first, second, or third floor, you might be able to see there's 3 doors on hinges that can be lifted up. Well, you don't have to climb all the way up 140 feet to access that. It can be lowered on a winch and a chain, and then it gets accessed down on the first floor. And we can go on there, clean the crystal beads, change out the light bulbs. And so it's not as complicated as a lot of people might think it is. But once again, it's part of that overall design. You put in a beautiful light fixture, you are going to have to maintain it, so you have to figure out a way to get it up and down.
Is it true that it's done with the remote control now?
It is, yeah. Historically, it had a hand-cranked winch. So you can imagine that was somebody's job to lower that down to change the light bulbs. And now it's all wireless and mechanical, so you don't have to have as much of the manpower effort to raise and lower that chandelier.
If people want to see the chandelier lit, when are the times of year that it's lit?
Yeah, we have it every year. It's turned on for Statehood Day, May 11th is our state birthday, so we became the 32nd state, May 11th, 1858. So if you want to come and be guaranteed of seeing that turned on, that will be one day. We have started the tradition of turning it on for the first day of legislative session each year, so that's something that will be turned on that day. And there's state events and public gatherings that sometimes that chandelier will be turned on. Like the grand opening? Right, just in August of 2017 we had the grand reopening of the Capitol, and that chandelier was turned on each of those days.
Is there a reason why the chandelier is only turned on periodically?
I think part of that goes back just to the maintenance part of it, because it's a lot of work to raise and lower it. It's even though it's automatically can be done, there's still a lot of wear and tear on the chain and the fixture, so it's not something you want to do every day, bring it up and down. So it really is, looking at the maintenance part of it. If you turn it on every day, it's often difficult, to bring it up and down to change a few light bulbs. And so the other part of that too is that has such a long tradition of not being on every day that it's something that people look forward to seeing. So if it were on every day, it would be like, well, that's a really neat part of the building, but there loses some of that specialness of being unique to the building and the size and seeing it turned on just a few times a year.
Governor Tim Walz held a press conference in the Capitol Rotunda to announce his choices for a new Chief Justice and a new Associate Justice for the Minnesota Supreme Court.
And one of the things we're looking for was someone with deep understanding of how the court system functions and somebody who would do the job immediately once they hit the ground. I wanted someone that had and could advance a vision that promotes justice and fairness and upholds the dignity of the law for everyone.
It is important that the citizens of Minnesota understand that you have the executive branch and the legislative branch that are by definition partisan, but that your judicial branch is not that. Of course, we all have our own backgrounds and, we are a product of our lived experiences. But when you come to the bench as a judge, you take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the state of Minnesota, the Constitution of the United States. And what that means for us, and we all take that very seriously, is that we're going to do our very best to decide the cases based upon the facts, based upon the law, based upon the precedent that is out there, regardless of who's in front of us and regardless of party affiliation. I embrace the idea that I'm a trailblazer. I think the Lieutenant Governor hit the nail on the head, which is representation is so important, and I recognize that. And I think any of us, when you're the first woman in a position, when you're the first person of color, you recognize the representational value of that, because it's so important for our little girls, black boys, women, to see women and people of color in positions of authority, to dream for that.
With the elevation of Justice Hudson, it leaves the opening for an associate vacancy on the court. To be a great Supreme Court justice, you need to not only think about the laws and how they apply to certain facts and circumstances, you need to have a keen understanding of how those decisions will impact the lives of everyday Minnesotans.
A mentor once told me, and you heard it from Chief Justice Designee Hudson, when a judge raises their right hand and takes that oath of office, they are swearing their loyalty to the people of Minnesota, to the Constitution of Minnesota, to the laws of Minnesota, and leaving behind whatever past interests, clients, activities they might have had in their past. And I take that responsibility incredibly serious. It's right there in the Code of Judicial Conduct, and I take it very seriously.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.